Ned Stark stood there, kneeling in the center of the great sept of Baelor. The sun was blazing down on his back, and his head was bowed. He had already said the words. He had confessed to treason, called Joffrey his king, and asked for mercy. He had done it for Sansa, for Arya, for his family. But in that moment something changed. Instead of shouting, "Ser Ilyn, bring me his head," Joffrey paused. His mother Cersei had a tight grip on his arm. Varys leaned forward, whispering fast. And just then, Grand Maester Pycelle spoke up in that slow, fake, grand voice. "Mercy, your grace, will show your strength." The crowd was confused. Murmurs spread like fire, some people cheering, others shouting for blood. But Joffrey smirked and said, "Very well, Lord Eddard Stark shall take the black. He'll serve on the wall till the end of his days." Ned didn't even react at first. He thought he was dead already. But when the guards dragged him up alive, something in his chest shifted. He was going to live. As he was led away, Arya watched from the crowd, hidden beside Yoren. Her fingers were clenched so tight around the hilt of her tiny blade, she was bleeding. She wanted to run out, scream for her father. But Yoren held her back, whispering, "He's alive. That's enough for now." Meanwhile, in the Red Keep, Cersei's face was pale with fury. She had wanted Ned dead. But Varys convinced her otherwise. "Kill him, and you make him a martyr," he said. "Spare him, and you send a message. The crown can be merciful, but—" Deep down, she knew the game was changing. Ned was thrown into a cell for a few more days while arrangements were made. Then came the moment of exile. The black clothes, the heavy chains, the long ride toward the wall under the watch of gold cloaks. He said nothing during the journey, just kept replaying everything over and over in his mind. Back in Winterfell, news reached Robb that his father had been spared. At first he couldn't believe it. He had already started marching south, an army behind him. Catelyn was half in tears, half in prayer. But Robb didn't stop the march. "He's still a prisoner," he said, "and my sisters are still in danger." When Ned finally arrived at Castle Black, he looked like a ghost of the man he once was. But Jon Snow ran to him. They hugged tightly, a silent moment shared between a father and a bastard son. Jon could see the change in his father's eyes, pain, regret, and a question. What now? On the wall things were darker than ever. Rangers disappearing, wildlings whispering about strange things in the forest. But Ned took it all in with quiet resolve. He had been handed death and walked away. He wouldn't waste what time he had left. But even at the wall, the Game of Thrones reached for him. A raven arrived one frozen morning, a letter from Maester Luwin. "Robb is at war." Ned stood on the edge of the wall, looking north, but his heart was south. He had tried to play the game with honor. Now he had to decide if he'd keep playing at all. Snow crunched under Ned's boots as he walked along the wall. It was colder than Winterfell ever got, and the wind never stopped screaming. The black cloak didn't help much, and neither did the thick layers of fur. But Ned didn't complain. Not once. He had lived. And that was both a blessing and a curse. Each morning at Castle Black was the same. Wake before dawn, train the new recruits, talk with the Lord Commander, check the ravens, patrols, quiet meals, long silences, nights filled with wind and dreams of blood. Jon watched his father carefully. There were questions he wanted to ask, but couldn't, not yet. Ned was a silent storm now, calm on the outside but full of war within. One evening, as the brothers gathered near the fire in the mess hall, Jon sat beside Ned. No titles now. No Lord Stark, just a man of the Night's Watch. "I never thought I'd see you again," Jon whispered. Ned looked up from his bowl of stew. His voice was low, cracked. "Neither did I." Jon hesitated, then asked, "Why'd you confess, if you were innocent?" Ned didn't answer for a long moment. Then he said, "I did it for your sisters, for my family. Honor's no good if it gets your children killed." That shook Jon. Deep down, part of him had always believed honor was everything. Ned had taught him that. But now here he was alive because he broke that very code. Outside Castle Black, trouble was brewing. Rangers kept vanishing. One patrol came back with 2 corpses, cold, stiff, and full of terror. Sam said they looked wrong. Eyes open, black as coal. Meister Aemon burned them just to be sure. Ned saw the signs. He'd hunted men his whole life, fought in wars. But this was something else, something older. Something worse. Still, his mind drifted south. A raven came one morning, cutting through the chill like a blade. From Meister Lewin. The message was short. Robb has crossed the Twins. He marches to war. He refuses to turn back. Ned's hands trembled as he read the letter. He had told Robb to keep the North safe, to rule in his place, to wait. But Robb had gone to war anyway, for him. For honor. That night, Ned stood alone atop the wall, staring into the darkness. His knuckles were white as he gripped the icy stone. "If I had just stayed in Winterfell," he whispered. "If I hadn't gone south." Behind him, Jon approached quietly. "You blame yourself," Jon said. Ned didn't turn. "He's just a boy." Jon's voice hardened. "He's a Stark." That hit Ned harder than Jon knew. Yes, Robb was a Stark. And Starks don't sit idle when their kin bleed. But that meant more blood would spill. More sons would die. More fathers would bury children. He thought of Sansa, still held in King's Landing, Arya, missing, and Catelyn, left to hold her sons together like threads in a storm. Ned turned toward Jon, his voice tight. "I cannot stay here." Jon's eyes widened. "You swore an oath." "So did I. To my house, to my family." Ned's voice cracked. "My daughters are still in danger. My son is at war, and I'm hiding behind a wall of ice." "But the Night's Watch—" "I know," Ned interrupted. "I know what I swore, but oaths mean nothing if I let my children die." That night, Ned met with Lord Commander Mormont. "I must leave," he said simply. The old bear looked at him long and hard. "You swore your life to the Watch, and the gods will judge me for it," Ned replied. "But my son rides into war. My daughters may be dead. You asked me to stay here and train boys. When my own blood cries out for me?" Mormont didn't argue, he just sighed. "If you leave, you ride alone and you'll be hunted." So be it. By dawn, Ned Stark had vanished into the snow, a cloak of black behind him, and Winterfell calling ahead. Ned Stark rode through the cold like a man with ghosts chasing him. His black cloak was gone, traded for a grey woolen one he picked up from a quiet village, far enough from Castle Black that no one asked questions. He kept his head down, sword hidden, and words few. But in every town, he heard whispers of Shawar, of a boy king, of a wolf banner flying in the south. His son was making the world tremble. Robb Stark had taken the Twins. He had won battles. He had captured Jaime Lannister. The Riverlands burned and the North howled for vengeance. But with each victory, Ned's heart sank lower. He knew what power did to men, especially young ones. And if Robb didn't die in war, the politics would. Try to kill him instead. On the 5th day of his ride south, Ned stopped at an old inn near the edge of the neck. The innkeep, an old man with cloudy eyes, barely looked up from his stew. But the minute Ned took off his gloves, someone noticed. The sword at his side. Ice had been left behind, but even a Stark couldn't travel unarmed. And in a world at war, a lone man with a Valyrian dagger was a man worth watching. By nightfall, whispers had started. "That man walks like a lord. He's got the look of the North in him." The next morning, Ned found a rider outside waiting. A woman cloaked in black leather, face half covered. She didn't say her name, just handed him a message sealed with wax, and walked away. He broke the seal. "Come to Riverrun. Catelyn waits." His hands trembled. For weeks, he had imagined. His family gone, his wife broken by grief, but now hope. He changed direction immediately, leaving the inn and heading southwest. Through rain, mud, and broken roads. He passed burned-out villages, dead soldiers on stakes and wagons full of screaming children. The Lannisters had made the Riverlands bleed. When he finally reached Riverrun, the banners were high and proud. Tully fish and stark wolves side by side. And there, standing near the gates, was Catelyn. They stared at each other for a long time. She didn't run to him, didn't cry, just walked slowly forward, eyes wide, hands trembling. "Ned," she whispered. He nodded, and then she broke, down to tears, into sobs. She clung to him like he was air and water and everything she had lost. He held her, quiet, guilt carved into his face. He had left her, left their children, and the realm had torn apart while he watched from behind a wall of ice. Inside, things were worse than he thought. Robb was no longer just a boy. He sat tall, armor heavy on his shoulders, voice sharper. He greeted his father with a mix of pride and confusion. "You live," he said, more statement than question. "I broke my oath," Ned replied quietly. "To come back." Robb didn't scold him, didn't question him. He simply nodded once. But Ned saw the weight in his eyes. The weight of death, of command, of growing up too fast. Later that night in the war room, Robb laid it all out. "We've won battles, but Tywin Lannister is regrouping. The South still sees us as rebels, and Joffrey has Sansa. Arya's missing. The capital is a nest of vipers." Ned looked at the map. Red markers for Lannister forces, blue for the north. "If we push to King's Landing now, we'll lose." "So we sit?" Robb asked, voice strained. "While they call me traitor and hang our men?" "No," Ned said, steel in his voice. "We play the game smarter." Catelyn spoke then. "You think you can outplay the Queen?" "I survived her once," Ned said coldly. "Now I know what she is. And I'm not playing alone anymore." He looked to Robb. "I'll go to Renly." "Renly?" Robb frowned. "He's claiming the throne. He has an army. We need allies. And if he refuses?" Ned's eyes darkened. "Then I'll remind him who still holds the Riverlands, and where the true North stands." For the first time since his escape from the Wall, Ned Stark wasn't just running. He was planning, and the wolves were ready to strike again. The next morning, Riverrun was alive with motion. Scouts were dispatched, ravens sent flying, and small councils formed in hushed corners of shadowed halls. Ned Stark had returned, and though many whispered his name like a ghost come back from the grave, his presence brought a new kind of hope and a deeper fear. Robb sat in war councils with a colder edge now. Where once he had looked to others for guidance, now he gave commands. The boy was still there, but buried under a crown of responsibility and a coat of blood. Ned watched him, proud and troubled at once. But time was slipping. The war wouldn't pause just because a Stark came back from the dead. The message was sent to Renly Baratheon. "You claim to be king. Let us speak as men. Meet me in the Stormlands, Renly." Agreed, but not before setting his terms. A neutral camp, no blades drawn, no more than 10 men each. Catelyn begged Ned not to go. "They'll try to kill you again," she said, voice raw. "If I don't go, they'll kill thousands more," he replied. Robb clasped his father's arm before he left. "If they betray you—" "I won't be caught twice," Ned said, eyes hard. "This time I won't kneel. The ride south was long and dangerous. Bandits roamed freely. Entire villages had been wiped out, some by the Lannisters, some by those claiming to fight for kings they'd never met. Chaos had taken root across the realm. The 7 kingdoms were cracking. In the Stormlands, beneath a massive weirwood tree, the meeting happened. Renly Baratheon arrived in bright green armor, smiling like a man used to being adored. His rainbow guard flanked him, polished and proud. Ned stood in simple leathers, no sigils, no pageantry. Only the Stark in him remained. They talked for hours. About Robert, about Joffrey, about power and loyalty and war. Renly offered peace, if Robb bent the knee. If the North swore fealty, Ned refused calmly. The North bled too much to kneel to another southern crown. Renly leaned back, amused. "Then what do you propose?" "A union," Ned said. "Help us take King's Landing, and we'll help you hold it." Renly didn't answer right. Away, but the glint in his eyes turned sharp. "I'll consider it," he said. But that night something changed. As Ned sat alone in his tent, sharpening his sword, a dagger slid through the canvas. A shadow moved, fast, silent. Only years of war saved him. He rolled to the side just as the blade slashed through where his throat had been. He grabbed the attacker, twisted the arm, slammed the figure down. A young boy, not more than 20. No armor, poison on his blade. "Who sent you?" Ned growled. But the boy said nothing. He bit something inside his mouth. A crunch, a gurgle, poison. By the time guards arrived, the boy was dead. Renly swore he had no part in it, swore on the gods and his banners. "This wasn't me, I give you my word." Ned didn't believe him, not fully, not anymore. The next morning he left. No more diplomacy, no more letters. The realm had no time for words. On his way back to Riverrun, a raven caught up with him. It was from Varys, short, elegant and terrifying. "The queen knows you live. She has Sansa, and she is done waiting." The ink had barely dried. Ned crumpled the note in his fist. His face twisted into something cold, something grim. They thought they could keep pushing, keep using his family as pawns. But the wolf had returned, and he was done playing the honorable fool. As the North rallied behind Robb and the Riverlords prepared for the next move, Ned Stark sent out a command of his own, whispered through loyal men, carried by shadows. "Find Arya. Bring her home." And to the Lords of the North he said one sentence that would change the realm. Winterfell will not kneel again. Riverrun's great hall was quiet, almost reverent, when Ned Stark returned. Dusty from the road, blood on his sleeve, and a new shadow in his eyes. Robb rose immediately from the war table, voice tense. "What happened?" Ned tossed down a small folded piece of parchment. The seal of Varys broken. "Cersei knows I live," Catelyn gasped softly, but Ned kept speaking, voice even. "She has Sansa. I don't know if Arya's even alive." Renly offered nothing, and now they send shadows to finish what Joffrey couldn't. Robb looked from the letter to his father. "Then we march?" Ned shook his head. "No, we burn." He stepped forward and looked every Riverlord in the eye. "We've played by rules while our enemies rewrite them. We've asked for peace while they sharpen blades. No more." One of the Freys spoke up, old and smug as always. "If you go to war with the Queen, the South will turn fully against you. And what of the Vale, the Reach?" "We won't ask them," Ned said coldly. "We'll show them." That night a new plan was forged, not one of siege and patience, but of speed, surprise, rage. A small force, fewer than 500 men, would break from the main army. Fast riders, silent blades, Ned at the head. The target wasn't a castle, it wasn't an army, it was the Red Keep itself. A suicide mission, some called it, but Ned called it balance. "If they want to make an example of my daughter, then we'll show them what wolves do when their pups are threatened." Robb didn't argue, but in his eyes was the look of a boy watching his father walk into darkness. Again. Catelyn wept that night, not because of fear, but because of knowing Ned. Stark would not return from this. "I buried you once," she whispered. "I won't do it again." Ned kissed her brow gently. "If I fall, let them know it wasn't as a lord, but as a father." They rode under moonlight, ghosts in the trees, covered in cloaks blacker than crows' feathers. Through broken roads and war-torn villages they rode, past Lannister scouts who never returned, past river crossings marked with blood, toward the heart of the storm. But King's Landing was already on fire. Inside the Red Keep, Cersei had taken full control. The small council bent to her word. Joffrey, increasingly unstable, screamed from the throne more than he ruled. And Sansa, she was kept in silk and chains, a prisoner in all but name. She had grown colder, quieter, every smile forced, every word rehearsed. And one night she received a letter in a tiny rolled scroll, hidden under her tray of food. She unrolled it with shaking hands. "I'm coming, stay alive." Her tears came silently. She didn't sleep that night. By the time Ned and his riders reached the gates of King's Landing, the streets were chaos, food riots, gold cloaks too afraid to enter alleys. The Queen's grip had turned iron, and the people were cracking under it. But no one expected the wolves to arrive. They didn't storm the gates, they didn't march banners. They came through the mud, the back alleys, the tunnels once used by smugglers and spies. Varys's whispers had shown them the way. At midnight the Red Keep shuddered. The outer guards fell quietly, like leaves in the wind. The wolf had come home, and when Ned Stark stood again inside the halls of power, blood on his blade, rage in his eyes, the game changed. He moved like death, silent and certain. They reached Sansa's chambers first. She saw her father and collapsed into him, whispering, "I knew you'd come over and over again, but they weren't done." They reached the throne room before dawn. Joffrey was there, groggy, wrapped in robes, crown askew. Cersei rushed in moments later, screaming for her guards. Ned raised his sword. "You took my daughter. You tried to kill me, and you shattered the realm for a throne built on lies." Cersei hissed, "You broke your oath. You're no better than—" "I kept every vow worth keeping." Then he turned to Joffrey. "I should have done this the day your father died." Guards stormed in, chaos erupted, steel clashed, and blood flooded the marble floor. When it ended, the Iron Throne was empty, and so was the man who had once knelt. Before it, Ned Stark was wounded but alive. Joffrey fled the throne room in terror. Cersei was seized. The Red Keep was burning. But for one night, the wolf ruled in the lion's den. The morning after the Red Keep burned, the city held its breath. Ash floated through the sky like snowflakes. People stayed inside, fearing what would come next. The Iron Throne sat cold, empty, stained red with blood. Whispers spread faster than wildfire. "The North is here, the wolf has returned," the boy king ran. Ned Stark stood at the top of the stairs, eyes sunken but alive. Beside him stood Sansa, shaken but safe. His men guarded every hall, every corner. Cersei was bound in her own chambers, no crown, no words, only hate glowing in her eyes. Varys appeared from the shadows as he always did, voice smooth as ever. "You've broken the game," he said. "No," Ned replied. "I just stopped pretending it was a game." But Ned knew this wasn't victory. Not yet. Tywin Lannister was riding east with 40,000 men. Stannis Baratheon had raised his banner in Dragonstone, calling all others false kings. Renly had vanished into the Reach, and King's Landing was crumbling. The small folk feared the wolves almost as much as they had feared the lions. Robb arrived 3 days later, his army at the gates. The Lannisters hadn't dared challenge his march after news of Ned's uprising. When father and son stood face to face again, they didn't speak at first, just stood there, now 2 men, once divided by honor, now united by fire. "You did what they said couldn't be done," Robb finally said. "No," Ned answered. "I did what I should have done from the start." They called a great council. All the surviving great houses were summoned. Tyrells, Martells, Baratheons, even emissaries from the Vale and the Iron Islands. Each came with their own ambitions, their own claims, their own knives. But no one could ignore the North anymore. Ned Stark didn't sit the throne. He didn't even enter the hall when the talks began. He stood outside beside his wife, watching the vultures circle what was left of the realm. Sansa begged him to let her leave. "I don't want to be here," she said, her voice small. "Not in this city, not again." "You won't have to," he promised. But then came the message from Tywin. It was simple, direct. A Lannister's kind of message. "Return my daughter, or we return fire." They had Jaime. He had Cersei. It could have been a simple trade, but Ned Stark had changed. He went to Cersei's chamber one last time. She looked up at him with disgust. "You think this changes anything? You kill me and the realm will drown in fire." He stared at her. "I don't need to kill you," he said. "I just need them to see what you are." He dragged her before the council, before the lords and banners, the old men with dusty crowns and silent ambitions. She was paraded like a traitor, forced to confess her crimes, not under torture but with witnesses. Varys, Grandmaster Pycelle, even old records brought from the Citadel. The truth poured out like rot. Jaime was the real father of her children. She had ordered Robert's death. She had tried to murder Bran Stark. She had lied again and again, and bled the realm dry for her pride. And when she was done speaking, the hall turned on her. Not because of honor, not because of justice, because the lie had grown too big to ignore. The council offered Ned the throne. He refused it. "I came to save my daughter. I came to end a lie, not to wear a crown." Robb was offered it next. He refused too. "We're not Southerners," he said. "We came to take our people home." And so, for the first time in generations, the 7 kingdoms cracked, not from war, but from decision. The North broke away. So did the Riverlands, and the Crown lands were left a carcass of gold and blood, waiting for whoever dared to rule it next. When Ned Stark returned to Winterfell, the land was colder but quieter. Arya had been found at last, in Braavos, training with blades. She was coming home. Bran had grown tall and strange, wiser than his age. Rickon still ran through the halls like a wolf cub. Sansa, though, she stayed in the south, not by force, but by choice. "There's something left to fix here," she told her father. "I can help rebuild." Ned didn't argue. He just kissed her forehead. "Then be better than I was," he said. That night, standing alone by the Godswood, he looked up at the snow falling gently through the trees. He had lied. He had killed. He had broken oaths, but he had done it for something more than honor. He had done it for family, and in the end, that was the only crown he'd ever needed.